Alright, true believers, good afternoon. This is John Krupa, and you just stepped into the world, the freedom to draw unsolved mysteries. Today's case was taken from the show Unsolved Mysteries. We got a mysterious, unexplained death of a college student from Pennsylvania. His name was Jack Davis Jr. He went to the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. His mysterious death has never been solved, guys. This happened way back in 1987. We're going to draw him in a couple of seconds, and we're going to tell you about his story on this episode of the Freedom to Draw Unsolved Mysteries. Alright, good afternoon, guys. We're going to tell you about this young man's story as we draw him. Today's episode of the Freedom to Draw Unsolved Mysteries. It's the unexplained death of Jack Davis Jr. The legendary forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht tackles a suspicious death on a peaceful college campus. So, the case details is he was found in this stairwell right here. And this is what he looked like. And there's Cyril Wecht. Forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht can read a dead body the way most people can read a book. Wecht has performed some 14,000 autopsies and consulted on reviewed another 30,000, including the autopsies of Elvis Presley, John Benet Ramsey. Dr. Wecht was also called as an expert witness by the Congressional Committee investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So I think Dr. Cyril Wecht knows what he's talking about. And this case even baffled him. Although Dr. Wecht is often involved in the most high-profile and controversial cases, he has also assisted smaller-scale investigations. Among those was the suspicious death of Jack Davis Jr., a student at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar where that is, you go to the western part of Pennsylvania. You will pass Punxsutawney, and I think Indiana is before you hit Pittsburgh. So it's between the famous Punxsutawney, where they have the groundhog, and before it's after Punxsutawney and before Pittsburgh, if you're coming from the northeast part of the state. Authorities found Jack's body on Wednesday evening. He was sprawled at the bottom of a stairwell next to a classroom building. Jack had last been seen the previous Friday at a party with some of his fraternity brothers. Now that's important. He was seen sprawled out at the bottom of a stairwell next to a classroom building. That means classes were going on. That's important to this case. You'll find out later on. Authorities found Jack's body on Wednesday evening. Jack had last been seen the previous Friday at a party with some of his fraternity brothers. Also, this fraternity did some research on that fraternity, and it was not recognized by the college as a real fraternity. So it's kind of like a poor man's fraternity, I guess you would say. I don't know. Wasn't recognized by the college as a actual fraternity though, so that has to do with the case too. Jack's body was autopsied by a local pathologist. The results were sent to county coroner Thomas Streams. This is how Streams described his ruling that Jack's death was accidental. The body was in disarray from a fight. There was no sign of defensive wounds as a struggle. There was no drag marks. There was just nothing remarkable about the body. The scenario was that Mr. Davis wandered down into the stairwell in an intoxicated state, perhaps to urinate, collapsed in an unconscious state, vomited, inhaled the vomitus into his lungs, which therefore then subsequently caused his own death. The official report concluded that Jack died early Saturday morning, several hours after he was last seen. According to the official account, Jack's body remained in the stairwell for nearly 5 days. And that's where the classroom comes into, guys. There had to have been some classes going on in those 5 days, and no one saw this body laying in the stairwell. Jack's family doubted the official determination when a local journalist began publicly questioning the ruling. The family turned to Dr. Wecht for a second opinion. Even before he began his forensic workup, Dr. Wecht found problems with the official scenario. I was puzzled as a matter of common sense. How could a body have been lying outside on a college campus for 5 or more days unseen, unnoticed by anybody? Other thing that puzzled me, I thought, gee, why would a young man in the early hours of the morning walk 15 steps down a landing and other 5 steps to urinate? I remember when I went to college, and I remember that young men will do when they have to urinate. If they are inebriated, not too many people have that kind of discretion and personal sensitivity, so that did not fit either. Dr. Wecht soon found discrepancies in the toxicology report. Jack was known to be drinking heavily on that night he supposedly died, yet absolutely no alcohol was found in his blood. Dr. Wecht knew that was scientifically impossible. He died on Saturday morning. Whatever level you have at the time of your death will be the level that will be found later on. In order for him to have wound up with no alcohol in his blood at the time of the death, he would would have had to have been alive for about 30 hours. The fact then that there was no alcohol in his blood indicates to me that he did not die at the time when they theorized he had fallen down the steps. That extra 30 hours would put Jack's death on Sunday afternoon, not Saturday morning. Dr. Wecht found additional evidence that indicated the official story. Jack had been clean-shaven Friday night when he was last seen, but when his body was found, there was a heavy stubble on his face. He had to have been alive for a significant amount of time, perhaps days, beyond Saturday morning in order for his beard to grow. Dr. Wecht described one final discrepancy. The autopsy slides of Jack's lungs proved that the young man could not have possibly have choked to death on regurgitated food. After hearing Dr. Wecht's initial findings, Jack's family considered bolder action. Jack's mother, their thinking, we all agreed as a family and with Dr. Wecht that the body needed to be exhumed. It was the only way we would find out the true cause of death. After performing the autopsy, Dr. Wecht proposed an entirely different cause to Jack's death. So all the initial findings from this kid is all questioned, and they're good questions. Very good questions. Did this kid die accidentally, or was he murdered? After performing the autopsy, Dr. Wecht proposed an entirely different cause for Jack's death. The skull was never looked at from the first guy. So, Dr. Wecht describes as he opened up the boy's skull. When I opened up the skull, I found 3 fractures, 3 areas of skull fracture with significant bleeding overlying the brain. It's a blood clot. It's a pooling of the blood, and that was the cause of the death, which had never been appreciated because the head had never been examined in the first autopsy. Dr. Wecht also investigated the alleged site of Jack's death, the stairwell where his body was found. Wecht wanted to see if the location could somehow validate the official finding that Jack had died from a fall in the stairwell. Wecht's personal observations confirmed his doubts about the stairwell scenario. I realized the body that could not have accidentally fallen or been thrown from high up because he would have had eggshell depressed type fractures. Similarly, it did not appear that he had stumbled down the steps because there was no pattern of abrasions and bruises, and so that did not fit either. How did this young man die? Got one of the most legendary autopsy guys in the United States scratching his head. He doesn't know either. Dr. Wecht then visited a classroom located directly above the stairwell where Jack's body was found and looked out the window. Some 200 students had passed through the rooms during that time. The view of the stairwell was not unobstructed, yet not a single student had reported seeing a body. There was one final problem with the official finding of accidental death. During the 2 days before Jack's body was found, heavy rain had fell on the campus, yet Jack's clothing was bone dry. To Dr. Wecht, that was another glaring inconsistency in the official finding. Jack's clothes were not wet. I would say it was more likely that Jack Davis died elsewhere or was injured elsewhere and then was placed at the bottom of those steps. I base this upon the known facts. Now, I did look up this case. It has not been solved yet, and this is from 1987. So this is a very old case. It has been successfully swept under the rug, but that's why I do my show. We're bringing it back out into the light. Somebody wants to know how this young man died. This was somebody, this someone. His life had meaning to someone that knew him. Others have come to the same conclusion as Dr. Wecht's. Local journalists Marlene Brennan and Sharon Stantis investigated the death. Brennan theorizes that Jack may have been caught up in a feud between two rival fraternities. Some students report that there were up to 5 fights that night, and it could have been possible that he was involved in one of them and he was injured and someone didn't know what to do with him, so they kept him somewhere thinking he might get better, and he didn't, and then they moved him to the stairwell. May have well happened that way. This is a mystery, guys. (1987, 1997, 2007, 2017. It's old, guys. Somebody is looking for closure. Local authorities have not changed their findings in this case, but based on forensic evidence amassed by Dr. Cyril Wecht, Jack's family remains convinced he died in an entirely different manner. They remain equally convinced that someone who attended Indiana University of Pennsylvania knows what happened. They are hoping that someone will come forward. That is a big hope. He does not strike me as a troublemaker. And the only thing new I found on this case was a police officer did come forward and say that Jack had come to him wanting protection. Protection from what? I do not know. But that significantly tells you something too, right there. He was afraid of something. And the fraternity that he belonged to was not an official fraternity that the school recognized. Case has some holes in it. We're trying to sift through those holes, get to the bottom of what happened. May have been, like they said, someone didn't know what to do with him. Kept him around thinking that he would get better, and he didn't. And then they hatched this plan to put him at the bottom of the stairwell. That very well be. What happened to this guy? Also, they did say that the fraternity that he was involved with was involved with drugs too. He may have stumbled onto something that he wasn't supposed to see. That could have been happening. I definitely think this was foul play though. Without a doubt. It was foul play. Guys, that does it for this episode. We gotta scoot on out of here. We'll run out of time. This is the unexplained death of Jack Davis Jr. Guys, today do something nice for someone. Doesn't cost you a dime, and it makes you feel better. Guys, until we meet next, this is the mysterious death of Jack Davis Jr. from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Peace out, true believers.